You ever read an ancient text and wonder why some stories get this incredible blow-by-blow detail, while huge chunks of history are just kind of glossed over? Well, we're going to dive into one of those super detailed stories today, a wild account of a city under siege, and see what its very structure is trying to tell us.
Right. This is the big question that theologian Dr. John Oswalt brings up. I mean, it's a matter of proportion, you know? Why dedicate so much ink to this one event? He argues that it's not just about what happened. It's about embedding a really powerful lesson for us to find.
So the idea is the author wasn't just getting creative with the details. No, the story is intentionally long, told in what Dr. Oswalt calls marvelous detail, because it wants you to slow down. It wants you to really wrestle with some big ideas about what we do when we're facing something that seems absolutely impossible.
And here are the big takeaways it's pointing to. It's all about what it really means to trust when you've got no reason to look for a totally different kind of solution. And maybe most importantly, it shows how absolutely extraordinary things can happen through the most unlikely people you could ever imagine. Okay, so let's get into it. The city of Samaria is under siege, and people are literally starving to death. It is the definition of a hopeless situation. So who does this epic story of deliverance decide to focus on? Not a king? Not a general? Nope. It focuses on a few social outcasts, guys with a contagious skin disease who weren't even allowed inside the city.
That's it. Just four. Four guys who are completely on the fringes of society are about to become the main characters in this entire drama. The story zooms right in on this tiny, seemingly insignificant group.
And listen, their decision didn't come from some great act of faith. It was just cold, desperate logic. They basically said to each other, look, if we sit here, we die of starvation. That's a guarantee. If we go over to the enemy camp, well, maybe they kill us, but hey, maybe they'll feed us. It's our only shot. It was a complete Hail Mary.
And this right here, this gets to the heart of it. Dr. Oswalt points out that this is often how it works, through people who have no power, no special skills by the world's standards. Why? Because for them, taking a huge, crazy risk makes sense. Like the quote says, it literally can't get any worse, and there's a chance it just might get better.
So these four guys start walking toward the enemy lines, probably expecting the worst. But as they get to the edge of this massive Syrian army camp, there's nothing. It's completely silent.
Now, before you write this off as pure fantasy, Dr. Oswalt highlights something we all know is very real: mob psychology. The story says the army heard a sound they couldn't explain, and a rumor spread like wildfire that they were being attacked by a massive army. Pure, irrational panic set in, and this huge, powerful army just ran for their lives. It's a miracle, for sure, but it's a miracle that works through a very human kind of chaos.
I mean, can you even imagine that scene? These four starving men just walk into a ghost town full of treasure. Tents are just standing there, full of food, wine, gold, silver, everything. They just dropped what they were doing and fled. It's this incredible picture of unbelievable, unexplained abundance.
So what's the first thing they do? Well, pretty much what any of us would do. They eat, they drink, they start grabbing all the treasure they can find and hiding it for themselves. But you know, after that first rush of excitement, something else starts to kick in.
And this is where their thinking gets really fascinating. They start by just indulging themselves, but then this little spark of conscience hits them. They say, what we're doing is not right. This is a day of good news, and we're keeping it to ourselves. But right after that comes a very different thought: self-preservation. Hey, if we wait and the king finds out we kept this a secret, we're going to be in big trouble. Dr. Oswalt calls this having mixed motives.
And this is such a key point. We can get so obsessed with having perfectly pure, selfless motives for everything. But Dr. Oswalt's take is that in the end, what really matters is what you do. Did you do the right thing? Yeah? Okay, great. Even if you were a little bit motivated by not wanting to get in trouble, you still did the right thing.
So the men run back and tell the palace this unbelievable city-saving news. The siege is over. There's food for everyone. And the king's reaction? It's not joy. It's not relief. It's instant, deep-seated cynicism.
Just look at the difference here. The king's brain immediately jumps to the absolute worst-case scenario. It's a trap. I know what they're doing. They're hiding in the fields to ambush us when we come out. His worldview is so broken, so cynical, that he literally cannot compute the possibility of good news. A trusting heart, on the other hand, would at least ask, wait, could this be it? Could this be the rescue we were hoping for?
And the king wasn't the only one. This was the sarcastic crack his right-hand man made when the prophet first announced that this deliverance was coming. It's the ultimate cynical comeback. Oh sure, even if God himself opened up windows in the sky and just poured food down, this couldn't happen. He's completely dismissing any reality beyond his own grim one.
And because he said that, the prophecy came with a chilling condition, just for him. He was told, okay, you will see this great rescue with your own 2 eyes, but you will not get to enjoy any of it.
And the story makes a point of telling us exactly how that played out. When the news was confirmed, the starving people stampeded out of the city gate to get to the food. And who was in charge of managing the gate? That same officer. He was trampled to death in the chaos. He saw the deliverance, just as the prophecy said, but his own cynicism cost him everything.
So this brings us back to that first question. Why all the detail? Why tell this story this way? Well, according to Dr. Oswalt's interpretation, it's because this isn't just a history lesson. The story is designed to put a choice right in front of you. It's basically a mirror. On one side, you've got these desperate outcasts who took a wild chance because, hey, what do they have to lose? And on the other, you've got a king and his officer who are so trapped in their own cynicism that they can't even recognize salvation when it's staring them in the face. It's a case study in 2 completely different ways of seeing the world.
And that's really where the story leaves us. It doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow. It just lays out 2 paths and their consequences with brutal honesty. And it asks us today, which path are you on? The one that always assumes it's a trap, or the one that dares to hope that something good might actually be possible?